There's celebration today, but also a little bit of surprise because of our political divisions as the Senate passes the Great American Outdoors Act. MTN's Dennis Bragg reports it's a sweeping piece of legislation designed to provide permanent funding to the 55-year-old Land and Water Conservation Act.
Montana's senators have been expressing confidence the Great American Outdoors Act would finally succeed where other efforts had failed, permanently allocating dollars for the LWCF, the primary tool for conservation and public lands access. And when the votes were counted early Wednesday, the idea passed with a huge majority across party lines.
LWCF, as we think about it for Montana and for the nation, is good for public access, it's good for jobs, it's good for wildlife habitat, it's good for land management. And the best part about it, it costs the taxpayer nothing. When you think about Montana and our fishing accesses, 70% of the fishing access sites across Montana have been funded by LWCF.
This victory wasn't easy, and it certainly didn't happen overnight. We worked long and hard across the aisle with local conservation groups and public lands advocates around the country to build broad support where it never existed before.
In fact, Tester believes it was that broad support, including a positive conversation between Daines and President Trump, which finally convinced Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to clear the way for the legislation. Congress had already decided to keep the Land and Water Conservation Fund a couple of years ago, but there was no money in the checking account. Passage of the Great Outdoors Act takes care of that. While reaction is positive from many groups, a few critics have expressed concerns the act just means more federal land ownership in Montana. Daines says it's about removing barriers to public lands, while Tester notes LWCF doesn't target tillable lands.
We have about 1.5 million acres of federal lands in Montana that are inaccessible to the public. And so this is a very important conservation tool that allows us to get access to federal lands that otherwise aren't accessible.
Where this bill has been particularly useful is willing buyer, willing sellers. In a situation where you have a checkerboard pattern within our national forest, which is very, very, very common, and being able to block those acreages. By the way, using private sector, primarily nonprofits, to do that.
In Missoula, Dennis Bragg, MTN News.
The Great American Outdoors Act also includes $12 billion to help the national parks and other agencies repair aging infrastructure. It now goes to the House for approval.